Hey, welcome to Living Ardently. I'm your host, Adrian Giraldi, and we are back with another episode. And today's guest is an awesome person that I met a few years ago when I was a senior in college. And now it's been like 4 years since I last seen him, and I'm excited to talk to them again. So let's get into it. So today's guest is from Nebraska. He was a former missionary at Christ in the City, but now actually still is with Christ in the City, but now his role has changed as the program director. So it's really cool. Please welcome my friend, Blake.
Hey, Adrian. Thank you so much for having me. Very excited and glad this worked out. And just to share what the Lord's done in not only my life, but with our program and even connecting after 4 years. It's a great opportunity.
Yeah. And I forgot to ask you one before we start recording. How do you pronounce your last name?
Brouillette. So like Juliet, but Brouillette.
Brouillette. Oh, okay. So I was like, I forgot to ask him, so I'm just
Don't worry at all. Don't worry at all.
That's awesome. So, we met, I think it was spring of 2017.
Yeah. Yep.
Right.
Where I was in my second year as a missionary. So I was actually a missionary with Christ in the City at the time we met.
Yeah. And I was about to graduate as a senior at Ave Maria. And I went over there as on a mission trip with Focus with my missionaries and some friends. And it was a crazy trip to be able to, do a mission trip with Focus, because I always wanted to do one and wasn't able to do one until my senior year. But to also be able to go to Denver, which is a beautiful state, and also experience such a beautiful group of missionaries and a great mission that you guys were doing. So it was really a great blast to kind of meet all of you all and experience what you guys got to do.
Yeah, mission trips are a big part of our year, honestly. As missionaries, we look forward to them, and every March, it's a big month. We got 4 weeks of mission trips in a row, a lot of new energy brought into the program, just introducing our homeless friends to new people. And March is a month we all, as missionaries, looked forward to. It was draining. I mean, it wasn't something that was like, oh, great, look forward to this just fun moment, but it's a powerful moment to share your mission with others and invite them into your home.
That's awesome. Praise God. That's really cool. I appreciate that you guys were able to do that, because I remember there was a whole ton of us from different groups meeting in that week, and then we left as a new group were coming in. I'm like, man, how do they do this? So that's really awesome that you guys met us with that same energy. And the fact that you remembered me was it speaks to the mission, the missionaries that you guys have out there. They're great people.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's one thing too, though. Just when you do meet people, it's such a big moment in their lives to go on a mission trip, and you're hosting them in your home, so you had to meet 34 new people. We were meeting 40 or 50 new people, but there's always few, you get to know a little bit better, and you remember, and it's amazing because it's almost like a mini network of people you've met from all over the United States and world. Yeah. I always say if I want to, I could sleep on a couch just about anywhere in the United States now, thanks to my 6 years of Christ in the City.
That's awesome. Praise God. That's really cool. I mean, you definitely have a home wherever I am, for sure. So
love it. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Stay. You got it. So before we get into the mission of Christ in the City, why don't we get a little bit about your background, your faith, your upbringing? So were you born and raised Catholic and stuff?
I was actually, yeah. So I was born and raised in Hastings, Nebraska, which is part of the Lincoln Diocese, and it's pretty fun to tell people that's where I'm from, because they've garnered quite a reputation as just a pretty devout diocese and place to grow up. Yeah. And I like to say, born and raised in the Catholic faith, had priests around all the time. I mean, my high school, I only graduated with 42 classmates, but we had 5 priests in our school every single day. So just very much inundated in the faith in Nebraska. And always one of those situations where I love to say we knew the Catholic Church was real and the truth. And my brother and some of our friends I remember sitting around a campfire one time just saying, it would be so nice to not be Catholic, because we wouldn't know that all these things were wrong, and we wouldn't have the fear of hell in us, and we could just go do what we wanted. But we know, and it was weird because there was no love, absolutely no love. It was a lot of fear, but it was a good understanding of the catechesis of our faith as well, where I grew up. But that ultimately led to me going on a retreat when I graduated high school, and that was that initial spark, right? That first spark of being like, I've heard God loves me, but what does that mean, right? So that was that initial spark, which led to, as all conversion processes, a very slow just journey to, where I am today, filled with all sorts of, crazy, not too many ups and downs in the faith, but more just moments of diving deeper and deeper and deeper, which led me to Christ in the City, and here with the program 6 years later.
When did you decide mission work was the route that you needed to go towards?
So my little backstory, that's a story. So my sophomore year of college, again, I was just starting, this was a year and a half into understanding my faith. And in full disclosure, my dad brought this up at my wedding, which is so entertaining. But so I actually got in trouble for underage drinking in college. And I needed community service hours, and I was also pre-med, I just needed a resume booster. So I was like, what looks good on a resume? A mission trip. And I went to the Focus, the first SEEK conference that year. It was in, I can't even remember what year it was, but I got back from that, and I'm like, okay, again, one of those moments where I just dove a little bit deeper into my faith. And my friend Austin and he was very much, the person the Lord placed in my life at that moment to grow in my faith with. And one of our fraternity brothers was like, guys, got to come to Padre Island for spring break. We have a great deal. Like, it's going to be so affordable. And we're like, we will lose our souls. Like, we are trying so hard, we will lose our souls. And then this mission trip was advertised at our Newman Center, our college, ministry. And it was a trip to Denver for 1 week to serve the homeless for like $100. And I'm like, wow, that is everything I need. Community service hours, an excuse to not go to Padre, and it looks great on my med school application. So with all improper intentions, man, the Lord can work with anything. Seriously. Yeah. He very much allowed me to go, and my buddy Austin and I came, and I've been coming back to Christ in the City ever since. So that was my sophomore year at college. I came back that summer, and then it gets even more insane because one of the founders of Christ in the City, Yvonne is her name. When I was leaving for my mission trip, she goes, Blake, you should do a summer service with us. Come for the summer, serve the poor, grow in your faith and community. And I was like, I can't just tell her no. She's awesome. I can't. So I said, if my summer job falls through, right? And I had a research job lined up for that summer. I'm like, this is such a shoe-in job. Yeah. Sure enough, the job fell through, and I'm like, I have to go to Christ in the City. So I went that summer, and that really built just an understanding of, again, I don't know how big of an answer you want for this. I can dive into it later if you'd like, but it just it built an understanding of community and my own spiritual poverty, and how spiritual poverty is really what the poor struggle with in the United States, not material poverty, which led me to do 3 more mission trips my junior and senior year of college with Christ in the City, and then ultimately became a missionary after college with Christ in the City. So that's really awesome. How I had that journey to be a missionary.
That's awesome. So you, where were you going to school? You were making this trip every
so
semester.
The University of Nebraska Kearney is in the western side of the state, and it is only about 4.5 hours from Denver. So nice and close, very accessible via car.
That's awesome. And that just kind of, it's such a beautiful way to kind of I mean, it's funny because like you said, it was all the wrong intentions, but like
Hmm.
the Lord definitely just works with whatever, and
Absolutely.
and it does, and it's completely true, and I've seen it in my life and other people's lives, close friends of mine, and he constantly, well, regardless of what like you throw at him, whatever you choose, he'll find a way
Hmm.
to get you back, and that's so beautiful. So that's really cool. When it came to choosing, um, I mean, it probably was felt like a shoe in. Like it's definitely where I need to go after college at that point. Um, but was there any particular aspect in Christ in the City that really drew you? I
So it
mean, you kind of
actually,
alluded to it a little bit, but
yeah,
maybe.
yeah, no. So it wasn't actually a shoe-in. I thought I would
Oh,
become a Focus missionary after
oh,
college. And I was like, Focus has done so much for me on this campus. I was one of their student ambassadors on a non-Focus campus. So
mm,
one of their, I was going through their digital campus program. Love Focus. My brother was a missionary after I
mm,
came to Christ in the City. And, I was pretty certain I would go with Focus. And
yeah.
then I was on my interview weekend. And on this interview weekend, I'll never forget the speaker got up and was like, "You don't owe Focus anything." And
Whoa.
I'm like, whoa, I totally thought I owed you more than Christ in the City. Like, that's why I was going to come here. And they're like, no, you don't owe Focus anything. Totally reopened my discernment. Then I went on my
Mm,
Christ in the City interview weekend, and the formator, who, was part of the application process, sat me down and he goes, "Hey, we're going to accept you. You've been around a while." I mean, it was
mm,
like a beautiful, like, we don't really we care what you do because we care about you, but like we don't care if it's here or not. And I
mm,
was like, interesting tactic.
yeah.
But then he just goes, "The question I have for you is like, what do you need to be a saint?" He's like, "What,
Ooh,
like, this isn't just about you serving others. Like, what kind of formation do you need to be a saint?"
mm,
And it was in that moment I'm like, I need Christ in the City, because in college, as being one of like those student Bible study leaders, I mean, I was leading 3 Bible studies a week, and I had
mm,
never been discipled in my life, right? I had
mm,
never like truly been like, had someone to help me and form me in college. It was kind of like I just got thrown into it. And I
mm,
knew at Christ in the City I needed, and I didn't quite understand like to what degree this was going to happen, but I said, I need to be humbled. I need to
yeah.
not have someone look up to me for a year. Like, I should not go to somewhere where I can have someone look. I need to be thrown in to the mix with all peers.
Mm,
And, like, that's what I need to be a saint. I don't, like, yes, I could have served so many people and, like, led them on their path. But without that,
mm,
and I knew this, it was like, I need that formation so bad. I need that to not be able to hide, right? I need
mm,
to be like
yeah.
exposed and be vulnerable. And I know that with my personality and, the gifts the Lord has given me, I could hide and just have been, you know, I could have lived a great life in the eyes of many, but there was a fullness of life I knew I wouldn't achieve if I didn't go to Christ in the City, or a
Oh yeah.
place where I could be formed.
That's awesome. Wow. I mean, that's something to think about too. Like just for myself, like that question of what do you need to become a saint, and being someone who similarly has been in youth ministry for years and wanted to um knew that I was going to college, that was what I wanted to do. So doing between volunteer work and then actual youth ministry work, um yeah, it's a question to know. It's like, do you just need to be like a peer? Do you need to be someone who looks up to people? And yeah, I mean, just like that humbling, just for me, that this
Mhm.
is like huge to kind of think about.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I mean, that's beautiful. That again, even when you felt as if it wasn't a shoe in, that the Lord brought you to where it needed to be, and that's awesome to kind of yeah, I'm just kind of taken aback by that thought process, because I recently just left the youth ministry field, and I'm in doing social media now, and for
Oh,
the first
cool.
time in my life, yeah, I'm doing social media with the Grotto Network over at University of Notre Dame, Um, so super cool, and it's like for the first time, like this Lent, I was just a parishioner. you know,
Yeah.
like for years I've been working as parish staff and youth minister, and it's just been like one of the busiest weeks of the year, if not the busiest, for Holy Week. And so being able to be a parishioner again, it's
Yeah.
like quite a feeling. So it's like I feel like somewhat I feel similarly to what you kind of experience in, having to be a bit humbled in a way.
Yeah.
Um, but it's not like I craved this, but it's just like it's different, and I love it, and it's a beautiful thing to experience. So, um, yeah, to get back on track here. Um, so when you got into Christ in the City, and you experienced, the first how many years you got to just kind of discerning into like going to where you are now as a program
Yeah.
manager. What was the process there? How did that come to fulfill
Another,
turn out?
yeah, another wild journey. I mean, I actually thought I would do 1 year and be out of there. Christ in the City. I mean, I was, pre-med, had my med school application ready, took the MCAT, probably needed to brush the score up a little bit, but there was definitely things I had all the prerequisites done for. Could have very much gotten into different aspects of, healthcare graduate programs.
Yeah.
And after my first year, it was actually very much, again, like realizing like, okay, what do I need? I need 1 more year of this, and I also love it.
Yeah.
I absolutely love it. But it's like, yeah, I just need 1 more year of this. And it was so clear for the program for me. So I went with it. And then after my second year, I was really discerning seminary. And I'm like, you know what? I'm like, man, what is the Lord calling me to? And it was just very clearly not seminary. But I had no idea what that meant. But I felt very called to community life. So there's a religious community who helps run Christ in the City. It's a group of consecrated lay brothers called the Sodalicium. They're members of the Christian Life movement out of Peru. Is where they were founded, and they were founded after Vatican II. A beautiful, beautiful movement, which actually has a lot of, like, Catholic News Agency is founded by the Sodalite brothers, as well as, Christ in the City, the Sodalites, and fraternas are their female counterparts. They still take on the formation. It's not a Sodalite program, but it's definitely, they're involved. And anyway, it's like, I just loved them, and it was so natural because I wrote a job description for Christ in the City. I'm like, you need a recruitment. Like, this program is not, like, we seriously need to, like, recruit a little bit better, otherwise the mission can't go. So I wrote up a job, and they said, okay, you can do it. You want to do it? And I'm like, oh boy. Okay, sure, I'll do it. And then at that same time, I started my discernment with the Sodalite brothers, and I actually took this job with Christ in the City in August of 2017, and I joined I took it the first promise, like the aspirant promise, to discern, to look in more on in that July. So in July, I took a first promise to discern with the brothers, and then the next, it's not even technically a promise, but it's just like, going to seminary. And then I did that for a year and a half, and then just stuck on with Christ in the City when I discerned out of the Sodalites.
Wow, I did not know that entire
Yeah.
had happened. That's awesome.
Absolutely.
So in that year of formation or discernment, I
Yeah.
guess, how did that go? Was it an awesome, I mean, I know I met some people who, love the idea of becoming a priest, and then we got into it, and then, it just wasn't for them. It was just hard, or, different things. What called you out? How was the process, if that's okay to share for you?
The brothers are absolutely remarkable. They're still some of my best friends to this day, honestly. We only had family and immediate wedding party in the wedding, and we, of course, made them part of family and invited them. I mean, they're just such great men. and true friends. And when I was there, I saw that I was giving everything I could, that I was investing, I was like truly giving the effort, and I just was not as fulfilled as they were. I mean, I could go into details and practicals, but it's, when one finds their vocation, they're like, they become more who they are, right? Their heart gets set on fire. That fulfillment, not the fulfillment that is waiting in heaven, but right, we always have that longing for eternity, that desire that can't be satiated on earth. But at the same time, it's like I knew that like I'm giving everything I can, and I am not as fulfilled as the other brothers in the community. And long story short, it was honestly that simple. It was so peaceful leaving. I mean, the brothers just were so gracious and generous, and again, just couldn't speak more highly of my experience with them, and how they continued to form me to prepare me for that next step of marriage, even though when I joined, I never even had that on the radar.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's definitely, when discerning, religious life, it's like a very beautiful thing, and it's sometimes a very hard decision to even come to. Sometimes taking that first step is one of the most daunting things to like even consider it. But yeah, it is very peaceful when you come out the other end, and regardless of what you end up choosing, because the Lord's going to put you at peace at that. So
and I mean, I reflected a lot on like, why was it so daunting for me, right? Like, why is it so daunting for men and women? And it's so, and then you look back and it's like, why should it be is the real question. Because if we have a vision of eternity, which is something big Christ in the City is on, like Christ in the City loves talking about this, of like this vision for eternity, our life on earth is pilgrimage to get to heaven. It's like the things such as money or career, like they so quickly with that vision, like just who cares, and like truly like when we buy into that, it's like, wow, why did I even let that like consider like affecting a decision I was going to make? But without that vision of eternity, without remembering that this world is short and fleeting, it's like those decisions get derailed because we think very much in the world, right? As if death and suffering are the greatest evil. And it's like, well, you better not discern a religious community where you need to maybe fast, or maybe, like give up marriage and it's like, that's why would anyone do that? So it's like, it's just diving deeper into that, realizing like, no, with the vision of eternity, discernment makes sense, but to let go of all those fears, one must first truly be sold that this life isn't it, and we don't say it like that, but that's what it is, it's like,
it's true. It's one of the hardest things to come to, but it is beautiful coming out of understanding that, and it makes discernment so much less daunting.
Absolutely.
I know when I did, it was discerning, trying to like, I mean, I knew I had felt like this calling to be a youth minister, like all of like my college terms, but then like my senior year, I'm like, oh shoot, kind of like, am I being called to do focus? And I was like, oh man, I don't really want to like throw myself like this off. I already have like this idea of going to youth ministry and da 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 da. Well, I discerned. Similarly, I got past the first interviews and went to second interviews, and they're like, hey, they called me a week after I got back from interview weekend. We're like, hey, listen, we think you'd be a great missionary, but we think you're called to do youth ministry, and we want you to pursue that. I'm like, whoa, crazy. That's amazing.
So good. Yeah.
And it happened, and I was able to do youth ministry 3 years. 3 awesome years, and I love it. Wouldn't take anything back, besides maybe love kids better, at times. But I don't regret one bit of it. And I know when I get settled into our new place, I'm gonna still be involved in ministry in some capacity, whether it be small group leader of some sorts, but I'm gonna be involved. Just not as a youth director anymore. but it definitely was something became easy to kind of pursue when I was able to take that first step into like, okay, maybe this is the route, and the Lord will direct you otherwise, and if that's not the case. So
Yeah.
so when it comes to becoming a missionary over at Christ of the City, what does one need to do? Just
Yeah.
kind of get them in. Those who might be interested right now, and we'll dive
Yeah.
into Christ in the City a bit more
Totally.
in a bit. But like, what would somebody need
Yeah.
to do?
So Christ in the City, we have multiple volunteer options. So everyone who, like the missionaries are volunteers, So we have various capacities one can get involved. I mean, we'll start with the big kahuna and work our way back down. So of course our bread and butter of our program is our year of service volunteer missionary volunteer program. So missionaries commit to 1 year, and they show up in the middle of August and end at the beginning of July. And people ask, well, Blake, why is your year so long? And I'm like, well, this may shock you, but like the homeless don't operate off the the academic calendar, right? They're there the whole year. So we kind of try to draw that out as much as possible, and give a month and a half of we have, and that leads to our second opportunity, and that's the 2-month summer service program in Denver. So we bring in missionary volunteers for the month of June and July to actually come and take over our work with the homeless once our year of service missionaries transition out of the program. So they actually come and do June and July, and that's one where I did that during college. It is an exceptional if a year isn't something you can do, a summer, some people still can't even do a summer, but a summer is transformative. We actually run those summer service missionaries every week, month. I'll get to that in a second, but we try to give them that full missionary experience. And then the other after that, there's a 3-week mission trip. We call it summer service, but it's just 3 weeks. So it's like a mission trip to various locations across the United States. And there we go for 3 weeks, just throw all the 3-week summer service missionaries into homeless outreach in the cities. And that's it. And that's the end of May to the second week of June. And then our next option to volunteer is 1 week. 1 week on mission trip. And we have, on a non-COVID year, this is what you did, Adrian, but over 200 college students a year who come through our doors, and even some high school students who just stayed at another location. And then finally, we accept volunteers for our second Saturday lunch in the park. And we've had people fly in. We have someone drive in 4.5 hours tomorrow to come to our Wednesday lunch in the park just to serve the homeless. A whole group, a school. And what we do with that is that second Saturday, we go to the park and have a meal with the homeless where we work on building community and encounter. And anyone can do that. The commitment is low. It's 4 hours. It's come, get trained, go meet the homeless. And if anyone of your listeners are in Denver, or if anyone wants to stop by Denver, we'd love to have them and train them. And I will say, this is more than you asked for, Adrian, but I'm good at giving you that.
This is great.
When we bring in our volunteers, one thing I'd like to be very, I think it's good to point out and talk about is we don't just say, come and serve with us for a day. If we did that, I would borderline say we failed. What we do is when you come in, whether it's for 1 day or 1 year, we try to teach you to be a missionary for the rest of your life. Because even our year of service missionaries, they at max can do 2 years at Christ in the City. Let's hope they live to a good, healthy 80 years is the American average. Maybe they make it to 90. Maybe even 100. It's like 2 years out of their life. If that's all we serve the poor, that's an issue. So what we do with our program is we aim, whether it's your 1 week mission trip or your year of service, to form you and equip you to serve the poor the rest of your life, no matter what your calling or vocation is.
Wow. That's awesome. That's something that, some schools don't do for you, like universities.
Yeah.
goes above and beyond, like youth ministry programs. There's
Yeah.
so much like uh, growth that can happen within, but then like it stops outside.
Hmm.
And so that's awesome that you guys are kind of helping us, helping these people who help volunteer continue this
Yeah.
that mission outside. And I want to dive into that a little bit more because I want to give the listeners a couple ideas on how they can get involved in homeless ministry and things like that,
Yeah.
and how they can be proactive about it. But with being so active in it, in like doing ministry for our friends, our homeless friends, what is something that right now, just a quick tip before we dive into the latter half, of just kind of what you do when you see people on the streets,
Yeah.
just kind of how to interact with them, and what's
Yeah.
the best practice just for that,
First,
just right now.
yeah, we'll make it real quick. Try to do it in under a minute. What we say is introduce yourself and look them in the eye, right? Before you even give them anything, before we go into the practicals, the care kits or your demeanor, it's like the amount of homeless I've talked to where I'm talking to them and people won't look at us is shocking. I know it can be scary. It may not always go as planned, but the least you can do is just look them in the eyes and say hello. Smile.
Yeah.
I mean, if you can't even speak, that's okay. Just smile, right? You show them their dignity. You show them their worth. They're not invisible, and they are loved, even if it's by you in a half a second glance.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's something that I learned while I was there, and I've carried it since.
Yeah.
And that's a practice that I have taught my teens when doing homeless ministry work that we've done. When we do our soup kitchen that we do at my parish that I used to work at, it's just something I always told them to do. Is just like meet these people right there in the eye, and I always give them the time of day, and talk to them as if you were talking to just one of your friends, another human being, and it's just what they are. So that's awesome, man. If you haven't gotten to the understanding, Christ in the City completely does amazing work with the homeless people over in Denver, but they are trying to, like they said, whoever comes tries to spread this mission everywhere across the world, for all those who come visit them in Denver. Do you guys have any other branches outside of Denver?
So no, we're in the process of expanding. It's still a couple years out. Nothing formal's been announced because we haven't done anything formal yet.
Yeah.
But we do that 3-week program we've done it all over the United States, in Philadelphia, New York City, Los Angeles, Dallas, San Antonio, Oklahoma City. We're going to Gary, Indiana this year, just east of Chicago, and Dayton, Ohio. So, I mean, we've really done mission trips all over, and we're that's a good one too, right? To train people in those areas.
Yeah. So, hopefully, in some aspects, right, the goal is to change lives in just this little way, and hopefully you guys kind of hear some advice today that will kind of help you understand how to change just the way you speak to them, the way you treat them, especially, and maybe change your mindsets. Because I remember growing up, I had this weird notion to like avoid homeless people, and that was just something that wasn't great to me because of the area I lived in. The people who we did see in the streets were kind of in a bad neighborhood, and so like anybody was a threat, kind of. And so I kind of grew up thinking that way. And so when I met was introduced to the idea of doing homeless ministry in college before I even went to Christ in the City, doing a soup kitchen with the missionaries of charity. I was just like, oh, that's interesting,
Yeah.
And I got to like meet these people. I'm like, wow, these are people, and they're awesome.
Yeah.
And I got to meet with this guy, and he shared this beautiful story of, of him and his wife, and how his life ended up, how he ended up where he was, and he's like, I don't think I deserve to be here. but I know the God's taking care of me. And and you know, like these people are some of the most faithful people you will ever meet.
I agree.
Which is interesting.
Yeah, I agree. And I will say too, though, Adrian, it's like we don't blame parents or think they did anything wrong sometimes for like making kids afraid of homeless. It's like something to be like, we are always very careful about that. It's like, of course, as a parent, you are not going to teach your kid, like you have to like protect your kids, and safety does come first in that way. But it's like that beautiful moment of, all right, moving from adolescence to adulthood, right? And it's like, okay, now I'm like, I can, you know, we're still very, you know, always being careful, not doing any, you know, we can intuit a lot using common sense and human nature, but also just some simple tips. But that beautiful moment of like, okay, like I get why my parents did that. You know, I'm not bitter at them, not upset. But now it's like, okay, I can now love them now that I've grown from adolescence to adulthood, and I have the means and the skills to take care of myself and encounter that person, right? And then, like you said, you realize, oh, and the gospel tells us Jesus Christ is present in that purpose, or in that person, right? And it's like, and then we have to ask ourselves, do I believe that or not, right? In that smelly, grumpy, you know, whatever stereotype you can think about, which again may have happened because that's real, right? But it's like, is Jesus really present in that person? And it's like, that's a great question that we have to answer. It's either yes or no. It's not kind of, you know.
Yeah, it's so true. And it's really true. I mean, like my parents, I don't blame them at all. I mean, we did grow up in the bad neighborhood, and I remember this conversation I had with my one of my parents. I forget who it was, but just like, you know, they were asking me where I was taking the train to Miami to work with the missionaries to charity. And like, what are you doing that for? I was like, you don't need community service hours anymore. You're in college. I was like, I don't. I just love this. You know, being able to work with them and getting to meet some of these people, and then they're like, kind of like this light of like understanding, like, you know, like kind of them seeing like, oh, I see why, like you see them, you know, I have a different mindset now, and they respected that, and that was so good for me and for them, and I think that now they're a bit more open to having these, you know, whether just saying hello or talking to these homeless people that we constantly see back in Palm Beach, especially where they're at, just saying hello, you know. At least they're more comfortable when I do it when I'm with them, you know. So that's a great thing. So yeah, we're gonna talk more about this. You know, we'll talk more about Christ in the City and its mission and what they hope to do in a little bit, and we'll be back and hopefully give you some more tips on how to, you know, what best practices are when trying to do some mission work or doing some good work for the homeless people. We'll be back after this break.
If you did not know, Living Ardently is now an affiliate with Be a Heart Design. Be a Heart has a bunch of great things for you and your family, so if you want to go get something, use our affiliate link in our show notes, and then you can use our promo code Ardently10 for 10% off your purchase. Everything that we make goes straight back into our podcast, so you'll be supporting our ministry. Again, so if you want to get something nice for yourself, for your friends, or your family, go to Be a Heart using our affiliate link. Use our promo code Ardently10 for 10% off. And not only will you be helping the ministry here at Living Ardently, but you'll be getting something cool too. Again, link in the show notes, Ardently10. Let's get back to it.
All right, we are back with Blake from Christ in the City. You can follow them. I didn't plug their Instagram earlier, but you can just follow them at Christ in the City on Instagram. And I don't know, do you guys have anywhere else that you guys are on social media?
We have actually a pretty vibrant Facebook page if you're interested in that. And then on YouTube, we do post our videos whenever we make them. We usually have in the fall come out with some good ones. But man, if you're looking for a good video or, you know, wanting to get distracted for a little bit, our YouTube videos are stellar. I mean,
I bet.
We have an incredible team, and they've done an outstanding job. And we've partnered with some unbelievable videographers.
Awesome. Praise God. Yeah, definitely check that out. We love a good video. I love a good video. I know that for sure. But But what's something that occurred to me in our conversation, it kind of got carried away, but we didn't kind of dive into what the overall mission of Christ in the City is. I mean, I think we kind of, it happened in our conversation, but like maybe it's good to give people like that defined definition of your mission there.
Absolutely. So yeah, Christ in the City is a young adult missionary formation program. First and foremost, like I hinted at that first section of this podcast, our aim is to form missionaries. Now, the way we do that, right? It's a both and mission. Catholics love those. So we're both forming missionaries to like be in the greater community, to be missionaries, and also to serve the poor. And what's weird is we could not do one without the other. Some people are like, you should serve the poor more. You shouldn't form your missionaries that much. We're like, we can't. But some say you should only form your missionaries. You shouldn't serve the poor. And it's like, no, the formation happens on the streets as well. By no means are the poor a stepping stone. And I want to make that very clear. Sometimes when I word that, I'm like, I don't like the way that sounds. But like in service to the poor, you have to form yourself to be able to do it properly. And to form yourself, you also have to serve the poor to do it properly. So it's this beautiful just interconnection of what we do. And we, again, our year of service missionaries are the main focus, but we have, over 50 summer service volunteers, over 200 college students who come through, thousands of unique visitors on our second Saturday lunch in the parks, and who knows how many more being formed via social media and just our marketing and networking.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's something that I feel like it's often left out, especially with missions like this, where like on the mission statement, like you forget that the formation is a big part of like of your service. Like for folks missionaries, like you're not just going out there and talking to college students and helping them meet Jesus. It's like there's a whole bunch of formation training that you have to go through to get to that point.
And if you miss that, you can't serve properly, right? Like that's why it's a beautiful 1-2 punch. It's like you have to form yourself to serve, but you have to serve to form yourself.
Facts. It's so true. So yeah, it's really great to kind of always keep that in mind when discerning mission work or whatever you're doing. There's always going to be formation of some sort that's necessary for whatever vocation it is, whether it be like mission work or like marriage or all this stuff. There's a lot that formation is we should be constantly growing and constantly becoming like dying and rising.
Absolutely.
So it's something that it's going to always be necessary. So if you're afraid of doing that, you're going to have to do it at some point.
Totally. Absolutely.
So with Christ in the City, we talked about like little things that you guys do, but I wanted to, at this latter half, kind of give value to those listening who want to help serve the poor. What are some good advice? You said that you have a ton of it, and I just want you to pour that all out on these people. Like, what are some advice for those people who want to serve and minister to the poor, and how they can do that, and what are effective practices in doing so?
Yeah, so a lot to say here. First and foremost, I want all you listeners to know that as part of your Christian identity, you actually are called to serve the poor, right? And that's that first thing. It's like, that's not for me. And it's like, I disagree. It is for everyone. However, your view of the poor may be the issue, right? So it's like every Christian is called to serve the poor. It doesn't matter if you are in the small town in Nebraska I'm from or Palm Beach, right? It really doesn't matter. We're all called to serve the poor. So I'm beginning with a little like aside. So then the question is like, how do we view poverty? So at Christ in the City, we talk a lot about material poverty versus spiritual poverty, right? Material poverty is a lack of material things. Spiritual poverty is a lack of spiritual things. And it is very clear when Mother Teresa came to visit the United States, she had many quotes about this, that the spiritual poverty, the loneliness of the Western world is the biggest and truest poverty. We don't, even our homeless are not struggling materially like third world countries. And we've had a lot of people go on mission trips and say, I've seen people live in way worse conditions who understood faith more than me, or knew they were loved, or had hope, and with the homeless, they have access to a lot in most places. What is the issue? It is this spiritual poverty. And we all have that spiritual poverty. Every one of us experiences that at some point. So
True.
It's one of those situations where, again, I will say it again, it's like when we view this, we know that this spiritual poverty is something that we are truly addressing at Christ in the City. And I would say, yes, there are some material things to do, but material service to the poor is going to be an exceptional moment. Even if you do a soup kitchen once a week, once a month, that moment is an exceptional one of your daily life. You're called to serve the poor every single day. And that's the truth. You are a Christian. It's part of your identity. So who are the poor in your life? And this is where we must begin. How do I serve the poor in my life if I don't know who they are? Right? If we only view the poor as the homeless person, right? Or we only view the poor as the single mother struggling, or truly these people who are hurting. If that's the only poor, then you're right. It's really freaking hard to serve the poor, especially if you're not in a place that has that. So what are the poor? Right? Who are the poor? A better question for Mother Teresa, where's your Calcutta? And this is something Christ in the City is trying to really hone in on and help people understand is, where's your Calcutta? She had so many volunteers who went on extravagant mission trips to India. And I mean, they were patching wounds and picking people off the streets in their own just in their own crud. It's just absolutely heartbreaking to even see pictures of this, right? People starving, people having true disease and leprosy. That is attractive to be a missionary to. And at the same time, it's repulsive, but it's also attractive. But what did she tell those volunteers? It's find your own Calcutta. Are you a college student? All right. The poor you're called to serve is your fellow classmates. Are you a high school student? You have to serve your family, your classmates. Are you a mother, a father, a brother, a sister? I mean, who is your Calcutta? What is your Calcutta is actually the first question you must ask. And from that, then we can go into practicals of how to serve the poor. And I'll go into practicals of, the homeless, just because that is really what we've excelled at and what we've documented and truly dove into. But I think the first thing, Adrian, is accepting where's your Calcutta. Because if you don't know who to serve, the poor, what kind of poverty you're serving, you can't even begin.
So true. So true. It's something that I don't know if any of us typically it's not like a natural first reaction of thinking of where those people are, who those people are. And something important that we all should to kind of think about and dive into a bit more, because the answer may surprise you.
And the answer is usually not what we wanted. It's right? It's oh, I'm called to love my roommates. They're so hard. Just let me love someone who's easier to love. It's those closest to us are always the hardest to love.
Yeah, it's so true. It's something to kind of to be able to accept that challenge is when you realize that it's that person that may be hard to love, whoever it may be, accepting it is probably the second second challenge of it all. And so hopefully wherever that is, kind of starting there, you're able to kind of decide and discern that in a proper way. That's really great. That's great stuff. You have any other ideas or advice to kind of share with the peeps?
Yeah, totally. Regarding the homeless especially, so what we start with is begin with just looking at them, right? Looking at the homeless, just acknowledging their existence, right? We had one, I tell this story all the time because it was so heartbreaking, and this doesn't leave you. but I was on the streets with my friend Arkansas. Take a guess where he's from. And Arkansas was flying a sign, and he was flying a sign as like, trying to get money from passerbys. And we're in the busiest part of Denver, and he's always chipper. He's always happy.
Yeah.
At least has a smile on his face, and he was so disheartened. And I was like, oh, this is not normal. And to make a long story short, he's just like, I'm like, Arkansas, what's going on, man? You do not look like yourself today. And he goes, no one will look at me because I'm fed up with it. I was like, what? There's no way. Like, come on, man. There's no way this is. He's like, no one will look at me. He goes, and these people call themselves Christians. And then I'm like, no, they like Arkansas. Come on, man. People. I'm trying to make him feel better, which not the best move. I'm like, no, Arkansas. People will look at you. People, they acknowledge you. Like they're, I'm trying to help him out. He goes, watch. He just makes a scene. I mean, he is flailing his arms in the air. He is just making a scene, and no one would look at him. They could see him out of their peripheral vision, but they were not turning their heads and looking at him or even smiling at him. They were literally avoiding eye contact, and it was heartbreaking because he proved me right, or he proved me wrong.
Wow.
But who cares about me being proven wrong? But it was the fact that he proved me wrong that no one would look at him. And his message was just like, imagine if Christians were actually Christians, and it was like, my goodness. So what's the moral of the story there? It's like, don't be afraid to look at someone in the eyes. And you know what? You may get yelled at. You may get told, what are you looking at? And it's like, you can always greet that with a smile. I'm just trying to say hello, and like you said, that's a big first one. Second, I would say showing the homeless you've thought of them is important. Oh, and if you're wanting to have more of a first encounter with them, a great question is, starting with your name, right? So it's like, hey, my name's Blake. What's your name? Don't go, what's your name, right? Because that's like, it's kind of weird, right? Like, what if you were to walk up to someone on the street and just look at them and be like, so what's your name? It's like, come on, we can do better than that. So it's like, my name's Blake, right? Take that upon yourself. What's your name? And then of course just be a little creative. The best question isn't always, how are you doing today? But sometimes it is, but you're going to probably get an honest answer. And then I would say the next biggest thing, all of this goes in the same category of what we call care kits. But the premise of a care kit is the homeless in your area and what they're going through, right? It's not hard. We'll use Palm Beach as an example because I'm sure that's where most of your listeners are from, and also let's just help with the practical. So Palm Beach is hot, right? It'd be easy to get dehydrated. You're going to sweat through your clothes. It's all those things, right? So instead of just giving money, right? And we never discourage people from giving money. We just let them know that there's better options, right? So what we say there is, for instance, it's like in Palm Beach, what if you just carried, fruit snacks or something that wouldn't melt in a bag, or a bottle of Gatorade or a bottle of water with you at all times, knowing that is designated for the homeless. And we call these kind of care kits. We, on our website, give a bundle package of ideas for you to put in like a gallon Ziploc bag or something similar and just have ready to hand out to the homeless or the poor. And what does this do, right? It shows that homeless person, I thought of you. I acknowledge your existence. I went out of my way to put this together for you. Some of them aren't grateful. Fine, right? When we give a gift, forget that a gift is given irrelevant of whether it's received or not. The Father's love for us, He just gives us love. It isn't dependent on if we receive it or not. He just gives it freely. Make this a free gift, right? Offer these things to people, not putting your identity in how they receive it, but in the fact you're giving a gift, right? You are doing what you've been called to do and leave it at that. Don't worry about the results. But by giving these care kits or even just keeping water bottles in your car to give to the homeless, you're saying, it's hot. Like, you're dehydrated. It's like, here's a water bottle, man. Cool yourself down. Woman, man, cool yourself down. Or socks. Like, oh yeah, I imagine, sweaty day out. Here's a new pair of fresh socks.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff, right? Showing that you care, you see them. In Denver, we have a ton of hand warmers we give out. In the winter, some of us carry blankets in our cars, right? We always know, in the summer, we don't carry hand warmers, right? Why would you give out hand warmers in the summer? But just showing that it's showing you see them.
Yeah. It's so important to do stuff like that too, because whenever I visited, I mean, so right now I live in Central Florida, but when I was in Palm Beach, whenever I go home and visit, one of the times that it happened to me, it was something beautiful. I was going into Target. I needed to grab a couple things, and I saw this man. It's typically weird. They're not typically out in front of storefronts, but he was out there. It was just asking for a meal or something like that, and I was like, all right. So I popped in there and I grabbed him a sub that was pre-made and and some water. They didn't have any, like, for some reason didn't have like a smaller cases, but I brought out a case of 16 bottles and I was like, hey man, like, would this be of interest of you? My name is Adrian, and again, taking some of the practices that I learned over at Carson City, and introduced myself first, and his name was Tyler, and he said, hey man, yeah, I really appreciate this, pretty hungry, but I don't need all these water bottles, I can't carry them all. I was like, but there are some guys over there outside of the complex, if you want to go give them some, I'm sure they're thirsty too. And I was like, oh man, look at that, they're looking out for each other. And so I took those water bottles, he took a few of them, and I took those, brought in my car, and drove around the complex. I found them, and they were right there by the exit. And I was like, hey guys, my name's Adrian, and Tyler over in the storefront kind of said you might wanted some water, and they're like, oh yeah, I love that guy. So it's they're always looking out for each other, and when they see that you are looking out for them, they really do appreciate it. And I my experience, they tend to open up in the few minutes that you're with them.
But it just shows right there, you remember his name, Adrian.
Right.
It's like it's like you're encountering. It's so simple, but it's so profound, and it's. I think I always joke. I'm like, I swear 90% of the conversations I have with the poor, they bring up God. In my daily life, not with the homeless or like those who are really struggling in poverty. Yeah. Maybe 1 out of 100 people bring up God. And it's like, what faith? Like,
that's crazy.
The amount of times the homeless bring up God is remarkable. I mean, remarkable.
Yeah, it's at that point where they just feel it's like as if this the only thing they have, and it's a faith that I wish I had sometimes, to kind of be able to know that I might not have much, but I know I have God,
Yeah.
And one of when I forget when I was over there, I forget his name, one of our friends over there on the streets had mentioned one of the most profound lines I ever heard. And he was like, like, I may have lost family, I may have lost friends, but the one thing I will never lose, I know, is God. And I was like, man, that is great.
Preach, preach.
It's a great thing just to have that, mentality. Like, he listens to material things too, but like, he's like, the one thing I'll never lose is God. And so I was like, that's one of the most profound thoughts, to just have. It's simple, but it's like beautiful. And so, man, I appreciate the tips and advice. I'm sure there's so much more that people. Starting there that's a huge amount of help, and I'm sure if you guys start practicing that there, your interactions with the poor, whether it be actual like the people on the streets or whether it be people in your home, like their interactions will be completely different in your if you just kind of change your approach and open your heart and kind of see things differently. Challenge your mindsets that you have. Excuse me. So we appreciate you coming on, Blake, to come and share these things. And I know this is a lot of I'm sure there's so much more to even have conversations about, and maybe we can have you or another missionary sometime in the future come on and talk more about this and some stories, or share some stories about some of these encounters that you guys have had. And maybe this can be a segment that we do, because I feel like there's so much richness in
and
these
boy do we have
to share.
stories, Adrian. Yeah, no, let me know if we can ever jump on. We have many missionaries who love to share, and we'd love to explain more what we do, how we do it, and the beauty, the fruit from it. So
and so if they wanted, again, if the people wanted to get involved or do some sort of mission work with you guys, who can they call? How could they reach out? What's the best way to do that?
Yes, again, it is christinthecity.org. You can find everything on there. I mean, how to be a missionary, videos, how to do the care kits. I mean, it's all on there. So just start with christinthecity.org. Have some fun on our website. It's done very well, and a lot of great info there.
Yeah. I will link that in the show notes of the episodes wherever you're listening to this. Check the notes.
Thanks, Adrian.
And there should be a link there somewhere. And you can, again, follow them everywhere to see their content, the things that they're making, and to kind of get a bit more of an insight on their stories there, on what they do, on the videos that are created for them. And I'm sure you'll be inspired in some way to kind of get involved at some point. And if you have the opportunity, if you're in Denver, please just figure out how to get to it, and just do maybe just those Wednesdays of lunch. Is it Lunch in the Park? Is it called?
Yes, Lunch in the Park.
Lunch in the Park. Do one of those. That was probably one of my favorite moments. I think that's where I had that conversation with the man who had shared that information, because you're just there, you're playing hacky sack with them. You do
the Lunch in the
whatever.
Park it's not just a homeless feed. It is it's an encounter, right? Our goal is an encounter. So
that's beautiful. Love that. And so hopefully in some ways, some capacity, you guys are able to find some value in this conversation that you had today. Whether if you're going to Christ in the City and helping out, or if you're just doing it in your own homes or in your local areas, I'm sure you'll find some sort of value here today. Again, follow Christ in the City at Christ in the City on Instagram. You can follow myself at It's Only Adrian, or our podcast. You can follow Living Ardently at Living Ardently. And then subscribe to us on YouTube if you're listening there, watching there. Make sure you like and leave us a rating on podcasts wherever you listen, subscribe, all that good stuff. We appreciate you guys listening. Blake, again, thank you so much for coming on and sharing some stories and all your wisdom that you have for us today. We appreciate that, and maybe in the future we'll have you back.
Absolutely. Love it. Adrian, it was a joy, it was a privilege, and to all the listeners, excited to hear, how you've seen this missionary identity. It's a beautiful thing, and I promise fruit will come. It's gorgeous how it always happens.
Amen to that. Amen to that. Thank you all for listening. Hope you have an amazing day. And until next time, keep living ardently. Peace.